You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Under the Puppet is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who support the show over at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. Welcome to Under the Puppet, the show that talks to professional puppeteers about the art and business of puppetry with the sole purpose of helping you up your puppet game. My name is Grandpa Choco, and this is Under the Puppet. Welcome back, friends. My interview this episode is with puppeteer, actor, director, and educator Allan Trautman. Allan has worked for the Muppets, the Jim Henson Company, and performed in such films as the recent live-action Jungle Book and the television show Splash and Bubbles. Allan is also the lead puppetry instructor for the Jim Henson Company, so you know there will be some great information in this one. Here now is my interview with puppeteer Allan Trautman. Allan Trautman, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. Let's start at the beginning. Do you remember your first exposure to puppetry?
Wow. Not really. I mean, I'm sure I was exposed at an early age to, in the late 50s, early 60s, to whatever was on then. I think Howdy Doody might have been off the air by the time I started watching TV. I don't know. When did that go off the air?
I read the book.
I got a gotcha question for you.
That's right. I don't exactly remember. I read the book, but I don't remember when.
I imagine there must have been some puppets on TV in the early 60s that I saw, probably, the Thunderbirds and all that. I suppose my biggest influence was when Sesame Street started airing. Mm-hmm. Now, I wasn't watching kids shows at that point, but of course it pretty much permeated the culture, so right. I was very much aware of it then. I remember doing some kind of puppet show when I was a kid, probably 5 or 10, in my garage, but it wasn't like I really worked at it. Right. It was like, oh, look, these sort of look like puppets, and I have a need to get up in front of people and make an idiot of myself in front of my neighbors. And so I just got a bunch of neighborhood kids, probably all younger than I am. Right. So I and just went into the garage and did whatever came to my head. I don't even think I never rehearsed, it was just one of those things.
Right. And I think I did afternoon or something.
Yeah, I think I did that once.
Right. Well, was puppetry from a young age, was puppetry a goal, or was puppetry something you just sort of kind of fell into?
Yeah, it wasn't a goal until I realized I could actually earn money doing it. Yeah. No, I sort of fell into it. I was studying acting at Washington University in St. Louis. Actually, I was studying physics. I was a physics major. And then 2 years, year and a half into that, I decided I didn't want to be stuck in a lab the rest of my life, and that I really enjoyed acting. I had done it in high school, mm-hmm. and so I wanted to get back to acting. And so I decided to do a double major in physics and drama. But the day I decided to add this major, I said, well, I should go see if there's anything casting around town so I could earn some money, And literally, I went up to the theater school office, which I probably had never been there before, and they had a call board, the old-fashioned, equity-like call board,
Yeah.
And gosh darn it, there was a audition posting for a show called The Letter People out of ECT, the public education station in St. Louis. And they were looking for puppeteers for the show, and they were willing to train. They just wanted people who could do voices. I said, well, I could do voices, and I went to the audition and did a bunch of voices, and he said, stay right there. And he ran back in the room with a puppet, mm-hmm. and as far as I know, aside from that one time in my garage, this was the first time I ever had a puppet on my hand in my life at this audition. And I just sort of figured it out on the spot.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess the mouth should move when I talk, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Just sort of basic, very, very basic. But I got the job. And so I cut classes every Friday to shoot this show.
Stay in school, kids.
Yeah. And I said, "Wow, okay, I guess I'm a puppeteer." How did that happen?
Well, that is, I mean, you talk about, on the job training immediately. Just you're doing a TV series.
Yeah. That was my training, and I guess the guy who was in charge, who was the lead puppeteer who built the puppets, his name was King Hall. I remember that. I don't know anything else about him anymore. I never, I was young back then, and I just sort of remember that name. So if anybody out there knows King Hall, he gave me my start. So if you can tell me who to thank, I'll be happy to do that now. King Hall and his lead puppeteer, his main assistant, were the guys who gave me that on-the-job training, essentially. So that's, yes, and obviously there's nothing like on-the-job training.
Right.
You just sort of get thrown in there and you learn how to do it. And you have to sort of figure out how to have a critical eye, because you have to learn everything from playbacks. I couldn't really learn while I was physically doing it. You had to stop, watch the playback, and go, "Oh crap, that looks terrible." Yeah. So and then it's an iterative process.
Did you have monitors and stuff?
Yeah, we had monitors. I think these were probably reverse scan, and so I don't know that there was a steep learning curve in terms of using the monitor in that sense, but it was, for me, it was just, my brain just works that way. It was intuitively obvious to me how I wanted the character to look, what emotion, how to get the emotion I wanted out of it. The relationship between my brain and the monitor went right through my hand without having to think about what I was doing physically, and it's just something that came naturally to me.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that way.
Is there something that you learned on that job that you still use today, that you're like, well, I'm still using this back from that first job?
Wow. No, just how to be nice, how to be a team player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, because it was, it was as a I'd been in plays before, so what it's like being part of a small group that's trying to do the same thing. This was obviously a little bit different. I had never experienced close-ups before, and so I guess I learned that once something is committed to tape, it's done, and there's no going back. And so if you're concerned at all about your legacy or what it is that you want people to see and how they want to think of your work, you can't do it half-assed. You have to fight for your for what you want.
Yeah.
And you got to let people know if you can do better.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there also something though about eventually letting go too? Like you're like, if I'm doing something, I could film it 1,000,000 times and still not be happy with it.
Sure, yeah. And, I at that point, obviously, I was a young college kid on my first professional job. So it's like, they say, "Love it, we're moving on." I say, "Great."
Right.
Hey, they love my work. Yay.
Yeah.
And then I watch the show and it's like, oh, I could have, all right, yeah, I guess I could have been a little better doing that. So that's the learning process there. Yeah.
Do you still, going off of that, do you still watch tapes of your puppetry work even today? Like, do you still watch your work and with a critical eye? Or
not intentionally. I mean, yeah. I don't intentionally go back to watch it, but if I do, of course I watch it with a critical eye.
Right.
Yeah, I like to watch old tapes of myself and just get completely blasted.
Right. Well, I just mean, like, do you like football teams, they study past games and said, oh, we should have done this instead of this. Do you do that, or do you just, because like I find it very hard to watch myself.
Yeah. I even watch, going back to like the first season of Dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched that and I'm going, crap, that's awful. Just awful stuff. I look at the first season of Unhappily Ever After. Yeah. And God, I'm like overacting. I can see how I'm overcompensating because I'm not doing the voice. I was performing live with Bobcat Goldthwait doing the voice, and so I noticed how I was like overacting in order to, do what I thought I needed to do because I wasn't doing the voice. Yeah. Until I calmed down. Then you look at second, third season, you realize, okay, things are settling in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I watch older things that I've done and I just cringe.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm not alone. That's why I asked the question.
You're not alone.
Now, you've worked in a lot of film and television, and then you've also done a lot of live puppetry, like with Puppet Up for the Jim Henson Company. Do you have one that you prefer? Do you prefer, acting for film and television, or do you prefer live?
Well, I'll tell you, anytime you're on stage and you're performing live, especially doing improv, for me, there's like no greater feeling of being just living in the moment, feeling that relationship with the audience that nothing can replace, and I've done, theater as an actor also. And so it's a similar thing and you talk to anybody who's been on the stage and unless they have become deathly afraid of doing it, unless they have some kind of, stage fright. There's really nothing that compares to that. There are moments if you're working in front of a camera where that happens. Mm-hmm. And, good actors will be in the moment in front of the camera also, and you can get that feeling. But there's never that feeling that you're connecting with the audience the way you are, obviously, when you're in front of an audience. And so especially doing improv, there's little that compares with that in terms of feeling really alive, right. And that every decision you make is important and it's not life or death. It's not life or death, but it feels life or death.
Right.
Yeah. And I find that very exciting, very energizing. And I really look forward to that.
Yeah.
Those brief 90 minutes when you're on stage and it's like the show starts and it starts running and that there's nothing that's going to interrupt it. It's a steamroller. It's a freight train going through at this point. Right. And you can feel that momentum, I love that.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel alive. And it makes all those other countless hours sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring worthwhile.
Now, without naming names, you don't have to name names or projects. What is maybe not the worst audition experience you had, but just like a horrible audition story?
Well, I went into Brian once. No. My worst audition experience as an actor
mm-hmm.
Was this commercial I went out for. I have no idea what it was for. I get there, and there's like a huge crowd of people. Typically, you go to a commercial audition, and there's like 12 people who look just like you sitting there waiting to go in. This one, it was just a huge crowd. There was no discernible pattern. And they handed you a card with a number on it, and you wrote your name next to it. And they shoved us in groups of, I don't know, half a dozen or so. And we just stood there for like 5 seconds with the card under our chins, mugshot style.
Uh-huh.
And we slated our names, and they said, "Thank you, that's it." And we left. And and I looked at my card, and I was like number 386. And that's all they were doing all day long.
Oh, my God.
And I was so pissed off. It's like, I drove all this way to basically deliver a headshot.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I look like. You have my headshot. It was
Yeah.
sent in electronically. You
Yeah.
don't need me to... Oh, my God. I could not believe that.
But that's one of the things, I mean, you got to go through auditions like that in this business, right? Like,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah,
unless
so
you're a
you laugh it
superstar.
off. You treat yourself to Starbucks and a donut.
Yeah.
To make the trip worthwhile. And it's like, all right, well, that didn't take too long. You try and be thankful for small things. My worst puppeteering audition was for Team America because it was all, or mostly, marionettes, and I don't do marionettes. For some reason, they called me in. And so my entire audition with this character was me just monologuing on how drunk and uncoordinated I am. I can't seem to find this chair. I fell to the ground. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I gotta get up, And that was basically my audition.
Yeah.
It was just completely embarrassing.
Did you work on Team America?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah.
No, they actually did call me in a couple of days when there's like big crowd scenes, because I know there were some other rod and other types of puppets and facial things. They did call me in twice to work 2 days for crowds, but I happened to be busy those two specific days. Yeah. So it killed me not to be able to do that, but there was, I don't know what I was doing otherwise, but I was committed to something else.
Well, but even with that bad audition experience, they still called you in. I know it was a crowd scene, but still they called you.
Because they know me, otherwise they wouldn't have called me in. It's not like, who are the best marionette performers we know in this city? Oh, let's call Allan Trautman,
Right.
But
they knew they could trust you.
They knew me.
Yeah, they could trust you as well. He's not going to be swinging the marionette around.
No, of course not.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there were puppets other than marionettes, also.
Right.
So there were tons of rod things, and I'm sure in a large crowd scene it wouldn't matter too much.
Yeah.
Whatever I did, I
Who's
couldn't
that
do too much harm.
Drunk marionette in the back of the crowd.
Maybe
scene.
that's it. Maybe they wanted one drunk character just not reacting.
Yeah.
To whatever the hell was going on.
Yeah. What are some of your audition techniques for when you go into an audition?
What I do at an audition depends on what they've sent me. Sometimes, typically I'll get some script to work with. But if it's like a commercial audition, most of the time you don't get that. And so then you just rely on improv skills, to try and create a character, have emotion, and be in the moment, and show them. The most important thing to do, I feel, in any audition is to show them what's unique about you. Mm-hmm. If you try too hard to give them what you think they want, even if they've sort of explained what they want in the script, then you risk just doing an audition that looks like everybody else's.
Yeah.
Whereas if you know that you could do at least a version that expresses who you really are, and what you can do that nobody else can do. I try and look for stuff like that, for opportunities anyway to do that. Now, very often, if it's for a TV thing or film, you'll get some kind of idea of what they're looking for, and they'll have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for. So then it's, obviously you want to stick to the words and give them what they're looking for. But half the time you could read the description and you go, oh, they don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
This sounds
general.
Yeah. Like one time I went in, I did a voiceover audition, and I read the description, and I said, they're describing Patrick Warburton. They're saying it's, kind of deadpan, and they described his delivery to a T. And I said, well, I can try doing Patrick Warburton, or I could just do my version of this material. So I did both. And then, 3 weeks later, I'm listening to the radio, and it's Patrick Warburton doing this ad.
Yeah.
And, so it's like most of the time, not most of the time, but in cases like that, the deck is stacked against you, obviously. They want Patrick Warburton, but they want to have choices so that they can talk down his price.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just being used as a pawn in a game anyway. So it's like, well, all right, at least I don't have to leave my house to do this audition.
Right.
But I will try to memorize whatever is available if I'm going in to do an audition. But I don't rely on that being memorized. Because you can have it memorized, but then when you go in, everything looks different. You've got different visual cues and audio cues, and things can throw you. And so unless you really have the dialogue down, just in a mechanical sense, forwards and backwards, then I'll always have the script there to rely on. Because most of the time they don't expect you to have anything memorized in a first audition anyway.
Right.
So it's good to have that just in case.
Well, and sometimes the script is completely changed from when they send it to you the night before.
Yeah.
They could send it to 5 o'clock the night before. You get in at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's different.
Sure. So, yeah, you want to prepare for it, but you don't want to be married to it. And you don't want to be locked into any... I don't want to lock into any particular reading of it, line reading. I memorize the lines dry, just mechanically. There's this set of words, and then I'll find some mnemonic device, not even a motivational device, just some mnemonic to help me remember the next line. Here's the cue, and that should remind me through some other thing that has nothing to do with the character or anything of what my next line is, so that I can spend my energy in the audition really, like listening and being in the moment, and then the line will come to me when it needs to. But like I said, I'll always have the script there anyway, just to be safe.
Yeah. As a puppeteer, what are some things that you always bring with you to the set to make your job easier?
To the set, I got my bottle of water. That's the most important thing, because you want to stay vocally lubricated. What do I bring? If it's something where I know I'm going to have time, then I'll have my laptop. I can actually get some actual work done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll have my smartphone, and that's a good distraction. I'll have my script and whatever marking pens and pencils and highlighters. Some tape doesn't usually hurt, because it's good to tape up your script and without having to track down a grip. Right. Who never understands what it is you want tape for. Say, can I have just a little piece of tape? And they hand you a rope with 12 industrial size Costco duct tape rolls on it.
All different colors.
All different colors.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I really, but really, I'm what tends to freak me out is when I go to work and there isn't anything I'm bringing. It's like I don't bring things to work. I don't have a briefcase with important papers other than my script. I don't have an instrument. I don't have tools. I don't have a toolbox. It's like I'm always like, well, yeah, I guess I'm always reminded that it's just me that's doing the work,
Yeah.
So there's very little. I'll bring a something to keep me warm, because sets tend to be cold. But other than that, no, I'm constantly reminded that it's like, no, it's up to you to do this job.
You're
so
right.
It's like, oh crap, yeah, all my work is internal.
Yeah.
So that's what I spend my time thinking about.
Yeah. In your opinion, what makes a really engaging, great puppet character?
An interesting attitude and point of view, which are two different things. a point of view, you want to have an interesting point of view, which is an intellectual take or opinion about something. This yogurt is spoiled. Okay, that's my point of view. I think this yogurt is a little spoiled. And then there's the attitude, which is your emotional reaction to that point of view. And that's what usually adds the most interest, because it's how you choose to react emotionally to that. Most people would react, this yogurt is spoiled. Ew. But if your reaction is, this yogurt is spoiled, okay, then we're laughing because there's a character there all of a sudden,
right.
So now, not every character has to go in the opposite direction like that, but at least in terms of improv, it's a handy shortcut, kind of a tool to use. You always want to find surprising, interesting little attitude and character things. So that's one thing that defines character. Not necessarily having an attitude that's opposite to the point of view, but just having an attitude,
right.
having a point of view, being opinionated.
Yeah.
If everything's fine, I'm not too interested in what you have to say.
Right. Who wants to watch that day if everything's fine?
Yeah. Your fine day. Great. Well, my life sucks. So there's that. In terms of a puppet design, you want something interesting. A puppet that's too bland is just not that interesting. Not every puppet has to have some kind of attitude built into it, because you want it to, over the course of its lifetime, have different attitudes towards different things and have different emotions. That's why a lot of puppets are built with kind of a neutral mouth that's neither smiling nor frowning, but something in the eyes that says there's something going on back there, that there's some spark of interest, something in the angle of the brows or the way it's dressed even, that says, oh, okay, this character is either kind of interesting because it's different, or, oh, I recognize that character, I know who that is.
Right.
That could be interesting. There's no formula. These are all just elements that you can observe and say, oh, the most interesting characters seem to have these types of things. But it's tough to reverse engineer it and say, I'm going to create the greatest character in the world by adding 2 pounds of this and a sprinkle of that, So the attitude, it's the attitude, the point of view, the emotion. Again, if everything is on one level, it's not that interesting after a while. It can be in an ensemble situation, So not every character has to be big and loud and opinionated either, because you may want to create a character that only serves one function, that is to work in this particular scene as a foil against something else, and then you want it to be bland and
Right.
So, and in that case, that was a good character for that situation.
Right.
But if you're talking about what defines characters like Kermit or Gonzo or something like that, there's you have to feel that there's a spirit in there, a human spark that's illuminating it somehow. One easy way of doing that is through attitude and care and point of view. And you can say even for Kermit, really, I mean, he's all about love and equality and treating people with respect, and that's his attitude, that's his point of view towards life, So I guess that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, and also I think with Kermit too, I mean, he kind of always had that spirit and that spirit of goodness, but that also evolved a lot over. I mean, he's been around for a while, but you know what I mean. Like that, if you look at Kermit on Sam and Friends, or Kermit early stuff, he that was kind of his longevity helped him develop that amazing character he had.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that some of it came about because of his work on Sesame Street. Because before that, everything he did was for adults.
Yeah.
And so he could afford he could have more adult type attitudes and be a little nastier, right. in a comic way.
Yeah, like troublemaker-y, kind of goofy.
That's an arc that a lot of characters have seen. Look at Bugs Bunny. He was came out. Even Mickey Mouse was a kind of a stinker.
Yeah.
When he first came out, he was a real gumming up the works rebel stinker.
Yeah.
And it was only when he became a corporate icon that he said, well, I guess I better watch what I say.
Right. In addition to the puppetry work you've done with the Jim Henson Company, you've also kind of transitioned into directing projects for the Jim Henson Company. Like
that is true.
Sid the Science Kid and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how, maybe not specifics, but how that transition happened?
With Sid the Science Kid, I just grabbed Brian Henson one day and I buttonholed him and I said, Brian, because I knew at that point I knew I wasn't going to be a regular on the show, but once the casting was all decided and they were starting to go into production, I grabbed Brian. I said, Brian, I would really love to, start directing if I can't perform on this. And he goes, that's pretty interesting. Maybe, all right, let me think about it. The next thing I know, I got a phone call and came in and did a few episodes. So that was great. Similar thing happened with Splash and Bubbles. I that was a little more difficult to work out because I was performing on that. And so anytime you're performing on a show, it's tough there's a lot of logistics that need to be taken care of when you want to direct also. But fortunately, I lobbied the right people, and when they needed a director, my name came up, and I was able to do that. But it's you have to. You have to remind them that you're not just a puppeteer,
right?
And it's because, and I don't blame them, because when you're staffing up directors for a show, it's like, all right, who are the best directors in town? Let's get these names together, and then as an afterthought, it's like, oh, maybe we should, if we need to widen the net a little bit here, throw the net a little wider, we can consider people like Allan, who've been with the company forever, know how to do this, but don't make their living necessarily as a director.
Right. What do you think are the advantages of having a director who is also a puppeteer working on a puppet project?
Well, it's there are directors who are like actors directors who know how to talk to actors and love working with actors and know how to draw the performances out of the actors that they know are in there somewhere. And being a performer, you can do that much more easily as a director if you've already puppeteered. You know what it takes. You know what's blocking performers from giving the performances that you would like to see. And sometimes they're systemic issues that have nothing to do with performing. They're workflow issues. You can't get the best performance out of a puppeteer if you shoot scenes in this particular order rather than this order, or for example, I prefer to shoot even though with the HDPS, which is like a virtual studio, there's no real cameras, but it allows us to shoot in sort of a hybrid single camera, 4-camera vein. Then the studio is set up so that you could shoot the entire thing as a 4-camera setup, which means figuring out where every camera is going to catch every shot for every scene, and then blocking all 4 cameras at the same time, and it's for a performer, we much prefer shooting a master and getting a sense of the flow of the scene, of longer takes where we can actually make sense from one end of the scene to the other, and then going in for close-ups, for example. And there are some scenes where you certainly save time by using 4 cameras. There are other scenes where that takes longer to set up, because when you set up a shot for one camera, you're destroying the shot for the other camera. And with puppets, every shot is a special effect. Every camera angle is its own special effect. And so if you look like you're looking at a certain thing in one camera, you can cut to another camera. You may look like you're on the wrong side of the lens. So there's a lot of those little tiny details that need to be all worked out. So anyway, that's just one example of, from a performer's point of view, why I prefer, if time permits, to shoot in masters and then go in for close-ups. There's also a certain language that puppeteers respond to. Hey, you! Stop that!
Yeah,
is one of them.
Quit screwing around.
Quit screwing around. No. Very few directors actually do that. But I know technique-wise some things that I can drop in. Now, every puppeteer has their own techniques, and you don't want to impose your technique necessarily on other people. But there are plenty of times where you realize, we tend to throw in a lot of unnecessary ums and laughs and giggles and things that simply just slow things down. And as a performer, I realize the best way to handle these things is, it's sort of like because you're working with a team, and a lot of times there's like 2 people working one character. You sort of want to telegraph the emotion, where you're going to your fellow performers before you say the line, and to let them know you're about to talk. And it's a subconscious kind of a thing. You don't really do it. It's only when you get into editing that you look at this and you go, my God, every single line begins with a ha or a or a line like that. And so what I find myself telling performers a lot is, it's not good enough just to say, don't do that. You have to tell them the attitude is right. That giggle is exactly what I want. Just do it under the line. The line should be doing that giggle for you.
Yeah.
The line should be doing that attitude for you. Find a way to sell it through the line and just start talking when it's your cue.
Yeah.
And trust that attitude will come through the line rather than having to, So that's one little technique-y thing I like to discuss with performers sometimes. Also, I believe, I may be wrong about this, but with Sid the Science Kid, when I came in to direct, I was the first one to actually sit down with the performers and read through each scene, just standing around, just looking at each other with scripts in our hands, without the puppets, without getting up and trying to stage it, so that we can get a sense of the scene and make any changes and discuss it and all of that. And that's just that's just comes from an acting perspective. It's like, I would like to have a roadmap for this scene before.
Right.
We're working pretty fast on TV, and it's nice to have to know why we're doing this scene, what it's about, what's the point of this scene.
Yeah.
And so I may have been the first director on Sid to actually do that. That's not to take away anything from what the other directors did, because they all know what they're doing. But I know from a performer's point of view, it tends to speed things up later.
Yeah.
Because what'll happen is the performer may never quite understand why they need to have this particular attitude. And then later on, when you're just trying to get that one attitude out of them and everything else is there and you can't afford to take any more time to shoot the scene, you end up just giving line readings.
Right.
You just do it this way.
Yeah.
And it's much better to have it come out organically.
You are often asked by the Jim Henson Company to train puppeteers. And I was wondering, what is the one skill you wish every new puppeteer had on the first day to make your teaching a whole lot easier? You'd be able to get to more things if everybody had this on day one.
Left-right monitor issues. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest impediment to most people. Some people's brains are wired such that is not such a big deal. Some people's brains are wired with a switch, and they can flip that switch, and in their minds they go, oh, I see, when I do this, it does that. Okay, fine. For other people, it's a perpetual issue, and that's not to take anything away from them. They're not defective in any way. It just makes it that much more difficult. And so most people will understand the basics about eye focus. Because I'm such a good teacher, I can get that across in just a few words.
Yes.
And then knowing that they need to go home and practice this. You can't learn what you need to learn in 3 hours a week in a class. Not even 3 hours, because let's face it, you don't work 3 hours solid in a class. You get up, you sit down, you get up, you sit down. So unless you're doing it every day, it's a skill like anything else. It's a skill, and like any other skill, you got to do it every day. Certain elements of it have to become muscle memory, and that's the bottom line. And until it does, you can't move to the next step. That's the one thing I would love for them to have on the first day. There is an app that it's called True Mirror, I think, which will give you in your iPhone camera a true left-right. Mm-hmm. Because most of the time when you use the rear-facing camera, or the camera that faces you, right, it flips it. Yeah. So so this one flips it back to where it should be. So you can use that to practice with. Right. Before you even come in on day one. Yeah. And that would be a great skill to have. Yeah. Well, that's great. I will find out that app, and I'll put a link in the show notes, so people want to check that app out. They can check it out, because that's a great piece of advice. Who is a puppeteer that you think every puppeteer should know and study their work? Wow. There's a lot of good puppeteers out there. Well, it doesn't have to be just one, too. You can pick more than one. But yeah. Just about any of the puppeteers in Puppet Up, I would not want to single out any one of them, because they're all terrific. They all, and I could single out people for things like technique. If you want to look at people like Tyler, like Victor Yared, like Drew Massey, whose techniques are unassailable. Kevin Clash is probably, in terms of technique and specificity and economy of movement, just awesome. There are people who there are puppeteers I admire in terms of just sheer performance ability as doing improv. People like Colleen Smith and Ted Michaels and Peggy Etra, whose techniques are they haven't had maybe the years that other people have had, and have came to it maybe a little bit later in life, but for whom you can't deny their character creation is so strong. and you can learn a lot, of improv from them too. And of course, they all teach improv, so
Right.
it's like, yeah, you should definitely talk to them about improv.
Yeah.
Julianne Busher is amazing with technique and really amazing with voices. She can sing beautifully. Donna Kimball is excellent. Great voice, really fun characters. Boy, there's a lot of good people out there now.
Yeah.
And I'm already regretting naming the ones I have, because I know there are many others out there. And people I've left out, like some of the people who came up with me back in the 80s, like Bruce Lanoil and Kevin Carlson. These people are great. They're awesome puppeteers.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always good, like even just mentioning names, even though you maybe didn't mention everybody who, you said you're regretting it, but like I find if you start studying somebody, you'll find somebody else. You'll find somebody, you know what I mean? So it's a good start. It's a good start for people to look at, and then you'll discover your own things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who is your favorite puppet character that is not your own?
Let's see. I like Kermit.
Yeah, who doesn't?
My favorite puppet character that is not my own. Let's see. Who do I like to watch? Who do I like if I see it? Oh, Grover.
Yeah.
Just adore Grover. He's so earnest and so incompetent.
Yeah.
I love everything he does. Frank's characters are awesome that way.
Yeah.
Obviously, I left him out of the list, but he's not puppeteering anymore, so I guess I can. Because all of Frank's characters are so well thought through and so complete as people. You recognize, you can recognize each one of them. I love. I always loved Jerry Nelson's big blue guy, bald blue guy on Sesame Street. And him and Grover, the one in the restaurant.
Right.
I mean, that act never gets old. I'll watch that any time of the day or night. Who else? I'm really going back far. I'm trying to think if there's anybody like any other somewhat newer characters, perhaps. Bill's Pepe is hilarious. Again, based on a real person.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's based on an aunt of his.
Yeah, he spoke about that on the show. Yeah.
And that character never wants for attitude.
Right.
So that always cracks me
Going
up.
back to the attitude that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What's been the highlight of your career so far?
Wow. There have been a couple. I always go back to dinosaurs. It was after the Muppet Vision 3D. It was my first real big major job with the Jim Henson Company, and it was obviously a great role, a great series of roles. It was a great experience. Being on a primetime network series with a decent budget.
Oh, for Muppets Tonight.
No, this is Dinosaurs.
Oh, Dinosaurs. Okay.
Yeah.
You had said Muppet Vision 3D, and so I was
I'm
confused
sorry.
for a second.
I didn't actually say Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dinosaurs.
Okay. Go back to Dinosaurs. It's I knew at the time it was one of those peak career experiences. I was only 39 at that point, I think, when I started that, something like that. 30. No, I was younger, a little bit younger, but I was, mid to late 30s, and I knew, oh my God, it's never going to get much better than this. And I was right. Not that I regret it all the time after that or the other jobs I've had. But number one, there were three puppeteer jobs on that show. There were the suit performers. There were the puppeteers who did the faces, and then there were those same puppeteers who did most of the hand puppets on the show. And I was lucky enough to be in the latter half of that, not in the suits. Mm-hmm. The guys in the suits, like Bill Pons and all of those guys, worked their asses off. I don't know how they survived. I knew I had the cushy job there. And I was grateful every single day I was at work. And I got to do so many different characters, so many different roles. All these day player, quote unquote, type roles, were just tremendous. We did, I think Jungle Book was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. The recent Jungle Book.
The new Jungle Book
Disney
remake
version,
with Jon Favreau directing. The fact that he brought in puppeteers to work with Neil Setti to essentially be acting partners was a very wise move on in my opinion. And again, it's just working on a big budget Disney classic film,
Yeah.
That turned out to be a fantastic film also. Again, I knew, these don't come along very often. And I got to play Bagheera and Shere Khan on a tremendous set full of, 200 people, where I was, sometimes we did it even not even with the puppets, because it had to do with eye lines. And after a while, he just liked talking with us, looking in our eyes. So I just remember toward the end, I was doing Shere Khan, this big, awesome Disney villain, on a soundstage up on a platform, full voice. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Unhappily Ever After was a great experience, because I was the only puppeteer on the show, so I always felt valued.
Right.
It was, and it was an extremely pleasant place to work. It was just from the top on down, everybody was lovely to work with. It was just a great work environment. The hours were relatively short, and so that was a great work experience too.
Yeah. Well, Allan, if people want to connect with you online, where can they go?
At Allan Trautman on Twitter. Allan Trautman, let me see, Allan's Fans on Facebook.
Okay.
And my website is allantrautman.com, believe it or not.
Excellent. You got that one.
Yeah, I was able to get it.
Get that name. Well, I will put links to all this in the show notes. And Allan, just thank you so much for talking to us.
Hey, my pleasure, Grant. I just want to say you're a terrific person.
Oh, thank you.
And your technique is awesome, too.
Thank you, Allan. I appreciate that. You can connect with Allan Trautman via his website at allantrautman.com. He's also on Twitter, where his username is @AllanTrautman, and you can find him on Facebook over at facebook.com/AllansFans. For links to all these, please visit the entry for this episode number 7, over at underthepuppet.com. Huge thanks to Allan for being on the show. To wrap up this episode, I want to talk about 2 fantastic events to go to experience and learn about many different styles of puppetry. The first is the National Puppetry Conference that happens every year at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Connecticut. It's an 8-day-long puppetry intensive that will expose you to different types of puppetry styles and performers from all around the world. You can find out more at theo'neill.org. The second event is the National Puppetry Festival, which is held in different locations around the United States. Like the O'Neill, this festival gives you a great exposure to different puppetry styles and performers. For more information on the National Puppetry Festival, visit puppeteers.org. Both the O'Neill and the festival are incredible places to immerse yourself in puppetry, and both provide performance opportunities as well. They are both valuable sources of inspiration to puppeteers of all skill levels. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. I welcome your feedback via email at hello@SaturdayMorningMedia.com or via Twitter, where the show is at username Under the Puppet. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. I want to hear your suggestions for questions I should be asking and for future guests. Also, the goal for this show is to talk to puppeteers making it happen in all sorts of styles of puppetry. So if you know an amazing Bunraku or shadow puppet artist, please reach out. Let me know who I should be talking to. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on Under the Puppet. Under the Puppet is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Mer Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Climo, Melissa Crawford, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Conflin, Dorothy Pachoco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi from the Technorama Podcast, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wabshall, Twitter user Butzingear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Moreno, Reed Loveland, Ivan Asquith, Vanessa Whitney, Janine Lee, Peggy Etra, Kristen Hogan of Squid Friends, David Akers, Zoe Palladino, Ellen Moltari, Christopher Harris, Rachel Jackson of Vox Fabuli Puppets, and Carolyn Weisner. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there on iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way you'll get new episodes the moment they are released. Under the Puppet is copyright 2017 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Pachoco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.